Samantha Parker leaned against the cold, sticky countertop of Earl's Diner as the old neon sign outside flickered in the darkness. At 24, she should have been studying for her final semester exams or out with friends her age, but life had other plans. Tonight was like any other graveyard shift in this small Illinois town. Stale coffee, half-burned pies, and the same tired regulars who tipped in coins. She tried to hide her exhaustion behind polite smiles and a worn apron that still smelled faintly of hash browns no matter how many times she washed it. Her mother, Maria, had worked in this very diner 20 years ago, scraping together tips to feed Samantha and pay overdue bills when Samantha's father abandoned them both. Samantha had grown up behind the counter, coloring napkins, pretending the spinning stools were rocket ships, while her mother poured endless refills for lonely truckers and drifters who wandered in from the icy roads. Tonight the parking lot was empty, except for the battered pickup belonging to Earl himself, the diner's gruff owner who had one rule: keep the coffee full and the gossip quiet. Samantha flipped her notebook shut and wiped a smudge off a cracked sugar jar when headlights swept across the linoleum floor. She looked up, squinting through the glass door as a sleek black car, far too expensive for a place like Earl's, pulled into the lot and parked near the flickering sign. Moments later the door chimed and in stepped a tall man in an immaculate charcoal overcoat. He paused at the entrance, brushing snow off his shoulders before walking to the last booth by the window. He didn't look like a trucker or a drifter. He looked like he belonged in a skyscraper office with leather chairs and gold pens, not a greasy spoon diner that smelled of burnt toast and old dreams. Samantha grabbed a clean cup and a pot of coffee, ignoring the small tremor in her hands. "Good evening, sir." "A coffee?" she asked, her voice calm despite her curiosity. He looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time. Something about his gaze made her throat tighten. There was exhaustion there, but also something gentle, something familiar she couldn't place. He nodded once and murmured, "Please." She poured the coffee carefully, noticing how his leather wallet sat half open on the table, revealing a black-and-white photo tucked behind crisp $100 bills. Her eyes caught the image just long enough for her heart to skip. Her mother's face, unmistakable, young and smiling in the same diner uniform Samantha wore now. She almost dropped the pot. She set it down quickly, her mind racing. It wasn't possible. Why would a stranger, a man like this, have a picture of her mother from decades ago? She cleared her throat, trying to gather the courage to ask. He stirred sugar into his coffee, his hand steady, his eyes drifting to the old corkboard near the cash register, the same spot, where Maria's faded photo still hung, pinned with a rusting thumbtack. Finally, Samantha couldn't hold it in. "Sir, I'm sorry to ask, but why do you have a picture of my mother in your wallet?" The man froze mid-stir. Slowly he lowered the spoon. He looked up at her, his eyes softening in a way that made her chest ache. For a moment he seemed ready to answer, but then he closed his wallet gently and shook his head. "Can we talk when you're off shift?" His voice cracked just slightly, and Samantha's heart squeezed at the emotion there. She nodded numbly. The bell above the door jingled again as another customer came in, but the world had narrowed to just her, this man, and a mystery she never knew was waiting for her in the quiet hum of Earl's Diner at 3 in the morning. The rest of Samantha's shift crawled by in a haze of weak coffee and restless thoughts. She refilled mugs, wiped down booths, and nodded absent-mindedly at old regulars who asked about the snow outside. But her mind kept drifting back to the man in the charcoal coat, still seated in the back corner. He didn't touch his pie. He didn't even sip more coffee. He just sat there, wallet tucked safely back in his breast pocket, eyes fixed on the old corkboard where her mother's faded photo still clung stubbornly to the wall. When Earl finally flicked the neon sign to closed, Samantha untied her apron, her heart hammering so loud she was sure the stranger could hear it from across the diner. She grabbed her coat but didn't put it on yet. Instead, she walked slowly to his booth, half hoping he'd vanished into the cold night like a ghost. But he hadn't. He was waiting. She slid into the cracked vinyl seat across from him. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the flecks of grey at his temples. He didn't look old, not exactly, but he looked tired in a way that money clearly couldn't fix. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the refrigerator and the soft tap of Earl's broom in the back were the only sounds. Finally, he set the leather wallet on the table and flipped it open again. There it was, the same photo of her mother when she was barely 20, smiling in front of the old pie case that was now a storage shelf. Samantha's throat tightened. "I met your mother a long time ago," he said, his voice careful, as if testing every word for sharp edges. "I was just out of college. Broke, hungry, stubborn. She gave me coffee, a meal I couldn't pay for, and a piece of advice that changed my life." Samantha felt a tear slip down her cheek before she could stop it. Her mother had been kind to everyone, but she never knew how deeply that kindness might have rippled outward. "What did she tell you?" Samantha asked softly. He smiled faintly, eyes misting. "She told me to stop looking at what I didn't have and start seeing what I could build." She said I reminded her of herself. Alone, scared, but not finished. Yet Samantha's chest ached with a strange mix of grief and gratitude. She could almost see her mother standing there beside them, still wearing that old diner uniform, still offering hope to a stranger. He reached into his coat and pulled out a crisp envelope. He pushed it gently across the table. Samantha stared at it, then back at him. "I couldn't repay her then," he said, "but I can help you now. This is for you, for your future and hers. Scholarships, debt cleared, whatever you need." Her hands shook as she touched the envelope. She hadn't opened it yet, but she could feel the weight of it. It wasn't just money. It was a lifeline thrown across decades of struggle. "I can't accept this," she whispered, but he held up a hand to stop her. "You have to," he said. "Your mother gave me a chance to stand up when I was down. Now it's my turn." Samantha's tears fell freely now, dripping onto the faded table. The old man in the corner booth wasn't just a billionaire CEO. He was living proof that the smallest kindness can echo for a lifetime. They sat in silence for a long moment, the snow still falling gently outside. Finally he stood, slipped on his overcoat, and with a quiet nod, he left her sitting there, staring at the envelope that could change everything. And as the door shut behind him, Samantha felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the stale diner coffee or the hum of the neon sign. For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, the future could be more than survival. It could be hope.